Welcome to episode 13, lucky number 13 of the SNARLcast about indie war games and their design, coming to you from Snarling Badger Studios. I'm Adam, and I'm here with Vince. How you doing, Vince?
I am great, sir. I am absolutely great. 13, an auspicious number, the number of the horned rat, the number of times the bells ring before the doom comes to man. Yes. No, I'm happy, man. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be a good episode. We're talking about something that's been coming for a long time, and that's we're discussing Trench Crusade today.
Mm-hmm. We are digging into Trench Crusade. You see what we did there?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was
puns.
Yes, that was Vince. He was the one that came up with the title, and I think it's a great one. I like it a lot. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Trench Crusade kind of in two parts a little bit, really kind of explaining like what it is to some degree, and also like a little bit of its history. We're not digging super crazy deep. This isn't some sort of, what's that guy? Ken Burns. This is not a Ken Burns documentary.
Yeah, no, it's not a Ken Burns documentary. Yeah,
so we're going to kind of talk about some things, but then we're also going to try to figure out if we can figure out why the game kind of like hit like it did, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do a little. It's kind of like why look at the suspects. We solve a mystery. Why?
Indeed. I don't know about solving, but we'll give it a try. So let's see, where are we at on our games, however, which are not necessarily pulling down big numbers like on Kickstarter because...
Well, we're not making Trench Crusade numbers. No, that's for sure.
Well, no, but we're not making Kickstarter at all. So that's why we're not making numbers on Kickstarter. But anyway, we're still currently working on our next publication, which will be Snarl 2025.
That's right. I'll be honest with you, Adam. I don't think I'd want a game that we make to be as successful as Trench Crusade. Like that feels like way too much expectation. I don't think I want that.
I really do want to interview the guys. I want to interview Thomas and Mike and find out like did they have to quit their day jobs? Did they just decide to keep doing it and then just never sleep? Or there's a lot of little when you go, hey, we're gonna make a game, it's gonna be cool, yeah, and then all of a sudden it goes like as hard as that does, that's gotta definitely be a thing where you go, well, we hadn't planned for that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That seems like the curse of success to me. I always want our games to be more successful, but not that successful. But
sure,
anyways.
Yeah. I have to assume that they're going to be. I don't know. They're probably. I bet they're expanding. I would be astounded if they're not going to try to head into plastics.
Sure.
All that kind of stuff. So,
absolutely.
But speaking of plastic, we're not going to be plastics for Snarl, but we are continuing to work on it. We're doing.
Yeah, it's exciting. I've got basically all the core systems in place for the Snarl game. It's going to be very exciting. And I think this is going to be a very different game to some degree than what we've tried. I'm doing something very experimental with Snarl. Mm-hmm. And here's what I'll say. If you listen to this podcast regularly, my guess is at some point before then, we're just going to spoil what it's about. We're just going to talk about it. That's
very possible.
Adam doesn't know this, but we're just going to talk about it early.
Yeah.
Unlike last times where we've always kept everything under wraps. Now we're just going to talk about it at something. So stay tuned. Come back and listen to us in the future, and you'll hear all about it.
We shouldn't tell Adam about it. We should just do it. That's what we should do.
I agree.
Yeah. But we're still working on that. You brought Tom in a little earlier on the project.
I did. Yeah, I'm working with him early because of some of the complexities of the mechanics that are happening here. Because the way I'm designing this, I wanted him involved at an earlier time. So I've already brought him up to speed, and like literally as I'm writing, basically once I finished the primary loop, I brought him in and said, is this going to work? Because it is, as I said, quite a different thing we're doing here. Mm-hmm. So as you'll see in time.
I did a little tiny, I would barely not even say that it is hobby, but I did do a little bit of hobby related to Snarl 2025 today. Very tiny bits. I basically just found the parts that I needed and started trying to dry fit some things together and all that kind of stuff. And I will continue to work on that for reasons that will be clear later on. But beyond that, what kind of stuff have you been painting, playing, etc.?
Yeah, a lot. So I finished up the big display project I was working on, the big competition piece. This is very complicated. It was like it's these two figures, the snake heart from Braum thing from Mindwork Games, and I mean, it took so many hours. And I painted the background, and then there was something wrong with it, and people pointed it out when I was going to feedback from like Scott and John and Sam and everybody.
Mhm.
And so I had to, kind of redo it and repaint it and fix things and so on and so forth. And then I still had it kind of wrong and had to fix it again. I mean, that's just the nature of competition painting. You're not done,
Yeah.
until it's right. But it got to a really good place. I'm very happy with that. Now what I am turning to is it's back to rats. So I'm working on a bunch of Skaven because I got to finish up my army for a tournament that'll be in the middle of next month. I don't have that much more to paint, just like basically think I have like 8 or 9 figs, so,
Mhm.
it's not like that big of a deal. Um, but I'm working on those little retogers, that kind of a situation, so should be
Mhm.
fun.
That's rat ogres for the rest of us, but I knew what
That's
you're
right,
talking
yes,
about. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. Hence the 13 is on my mind, right?
Right. No,
Because
I get
that's
that.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the number. Cool. Have you played anything?
Played a little AOS this last weekend. Started reading over a game I want to discuss with you in the future, but I'm going to keep that under wraps for now. So I
Ooh,
did.
nice.
There's something in the future that I think is going to be a cool, fun little indie thing to discuss. So, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just started reading it, so I'm going to take it away with me. I'm going away with my wife this weekend to finish up the zine game, and I'm
Mhm.
probably going to read that also in the
Nice.
interim period there.
Cool. I have been continuing to work on the robot legions for Grimdark Future from One Page Rules. I've predominantly, at this point, pretty much, I think all the rest of the stuff that I'm going to finish up, I'm still going to be finishing up on Twitch. Um, or I'm going to have to work ahead a little bit on the second army so I could get them dialed in so that I don't have any gap in between. You know what I mean? Like if I decide to
Right.
start painting offline to finish up the rest of that army, then I also have to work ahead so that I can then on Twitch start switching over to the Space Lizards ASAP. So if I just keep painting the robot legions on Twitch, then the overlap is easier. But so that's probably what's going on. I'm painting Crusaders right now, which are basically um they're hand-to-hand combat guys. They've got swords and shields. I in the
Are they like
Necrons.
the equivalent of like Lich Guard or something? Don't Lich Guards have
Yeah,
like halberds and shields?
maybe it's Lichguard or is it? Do they have Praetorians? Is that a thing in?
Probably. I don't
I
remember
don't
all
know.
the units
I haven't
from
kept up with
Necrons.
the Necrons that much, yeah. But they're cool. I like the models. That they have the great cape as well, so that's a lot of fun because I get to do the airbrush part on the cape, which makes it look like I know what I'm doing, and it's very easy. And then I can go back and I use a speed paint color called Dark Wood from Army Painter to basically repaint all the part that is not cape because there's an overspray and stuff like that. I prime them black,
Sure.
then I do my airbrushery, and then I paint the metal parts back to not black but dark brown, and then I go back and I dry brush it with a color called True Brass, and that's where I am right now on those 10 guys. So then it's going to be picking out details. You know, it's like mostly that True Brass color. Like I just watched Sam's video a couple weeks ago about like that whole 60-30-10 thing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I've realized that that color scheme is almost perfect for that because it is basically 60% true brass. It's about 30% sort of that teal that I use on the capes and stuff like
Yep.
that. And then it's 10% like a super bright orange. And
Gotcha.
they've been working out nice. I've been real happy with them. So
Turns out that
um,
Sam, he knows what he's talking about. It's
oh
weird.
yeah, well, it's funny too because I saw that video and I'm like, "Huh, I wonder if he came up with that." And then all of a sudden I saw like 3 or 4 other videos that were like talking about the 60-30-10 rule, but not in tabletop wargaming and just like other stuff.
Huh.
And I was like, interesting. Because the other big number that you see thrown around a lot too is always like the 80-20 rule. You know, you hear
Of
about the
course.
eighty
Yeah.
twenty
Yeah. The
rule, of course.
Pareto
Yeah.
principle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I still believe strongly in the 90-10 rule, which is basically you should spend 10% of your time watching YouTube videos about how to paint
Oh,
and
yeah.
then
Yeah. The
90% of
learning
your
versus
time.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah. The ninety
exactly.
ten rule
Yeah.
for learning versus doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of that one as well. Um, and as far as playing anything, I haven't, but I do want to reach out soon again to Sam, although it'll probably be after Gen Con. I would like to get together and play some more Trench Crusade, which we'll be talking about. But yeah, the time has not worked in my favor. And as we're recording this, it is July 20th. So this episode will come out on the
The 28th.
28th. And we will be 3 days out from going to Gen Con at that point. So
yeah, we both go on Wednesday now, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
go
leave
on
on
Wednesday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll be
It'll
there.
it'll be a good week. Be a good week.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for it.
And then that means that we will, like, it won't screw up our schedule, I don't think, because then the next episode will come out. So if the next if this episode comes out on the 28th, then the next one would be the
This is
4th?
absolutely riveting content.
No,
for
I
people,
know,
by the
I
way.
know. No. If it comes out on the
Like,
28th, the next one would be 11th. So yeah,
that's right.
we were talking before we started recording about whether or not we wanted to try to. Well, we were talking about if we want to record something at Nova.
Well, I want to do a
May.
Gen Con episode. Look, I want to bring the Gen Con experience to talk about some of the war games and stuff like that we see there.
Sure.
It's not a huge wargaming convention, but the reality is I do want to talk about it a little bit. Whether we do a whole episode on it or not, I don't know. It could just be something we talk about in the like banter beforehand, like we're doing now.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's a lot of stuff there still, right? It does have, it's always been
the
like
biggest it's the biggest gaming convention in the country by far.
That's right. And it was like primarily RPGs first, and now it's actually, I think, more like board games and dice, probably, honestly, more than anything else. Like that kind of thing. But there's a lot of everything. There's plenty of Magic there and other card games. There's still role-playing games out the wazoo of every type and kind you could imagine. And there's a good representation of all the wargaming stuff there. So I mean, like, I think there's still certainly stuff to discuss. So
for sure. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Gen Con. We should probably try to have a meeting with our rep at Wargame Vault. We generally try to do that every year, have a face-to-face, and just touch base.
You should do an interview with him sometime for the show. That'd be a fun interview.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, we've talked about doing an interview with somebody maybe more, I don't want to say higher up. I mean, Steve's a nice guy. He's a good guy.
Tell him to bring in whoever they want. Yeah, man. He's got an interesting story. I like his interest. He loves war games. That's what's cool.
Yeah. He sent me a message because I asked him a question a while back, and then he was like, I was watching your video and now I'm painting some stuff. And I'm like, nice. That is the plan. So yeah, one person at a time. Let's see here. Do we have anything else to talk about before we go into our thing?
I think that segues us right into the main topic, which is Trench Crusade. Speaking of war games. I know, you mentioned our friend Sam Lenz.
Yes.
And, I was talking to him at TMX. Mm-hmm. Okay.
The Tabletop Minions Expo, for those that don't know.
That's right. And at Uncle Adam's actual convention, he runs in Oshkosh, Wisconsin once a year. You should be there. It's really cool. Hope to see you next year.
Sure.
I'll be there. You should be there too. But at any rate, I was talking to him because he's tried a bunch of different games recently. Right. And he's kind of been
Necromunda being one of them as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he's kind of been let down or disappointed or not happy, or I don't know. I don't want to ascribe, I don't know what's in his head, but the basic thing we were talking about was he was like, I don't know, man, it's just not the speed he wanted, right? And I was like, what about Trench Crusade? He's like, no, it's perfect. It's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And that got me really thinking about wanting to do this episode because, Sam's been wargaming a long time as well as painting. You've been wargaming a long time, right? A lot of people have. And yet I find it like those people who've got this game has an amazing ability to attract both people who've been interested a very long time and invested in the hobby, but also people who are relatively newer and just think the concept is cool.
Yeah.
It's got such a wide appeal, and that's really hard to do, right? I do want to say that. It's actually really hard to both have something that's mega appealing to a broad audience and then hold them. And that's what it is, right? Sam actually likes the game. He likes playing it.
And it is definitely a function of the mechanics of the game. The game's mechanics are very different. They're not when I play, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting take on the way that happens, and it's interesting how when you first play it or when you first read it, at least to me, I was like, well, I feel like I'm missing something. This is not enough. There's not enough granularity going on here. But then as you play, you start to realize that yes, there is, but also how granular sometimes do you need to be? And I think that maybe a part of what and this is just again right off the bat. I think a part of what's making this game be appealing to a lot of people is that it is not the density of modern 10th edition Warhammer 40K. I think a lot of people who are looking at
Yep.
this game are people who are maybe tired of 40K, or haven't played 40K in a long time, maybe since 8th, maybe since 7th, who knows? And they're looking at this and they're like, it's probably just going to be more of the same with the ballistic skills and then the saving throw and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a very different kind of breath of fresh air, in my opinion, as far as mechanics are concerned. And then on the other end, there's the story and the art, which is not a breath of fresh air. That is not to say that it is derivative or bad. I'm just saying there's no fresh air in there. Everything is
Right.
icky
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
gross.
It's
And there's a
gritty as
lot of
all get out.
smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of smoke and dead burning bodies. And like it's very, very I made a video a while back about whether Warhammer was the grimdark anymore in
It's
comparison
definitely
to
not.
in comparison to a lot of other things, not just Trench Crusade, but also a couple of different, like a video game and some other stuff. And yeah, it's when you think about grimdark, it's not, in my mind, it's not as grimdark for sure as this. And you've got people who are 40K stands, I believe is the proper terminology, who are like, yeah, but this is too much, or it's just, and that's fine. And but it definitely struck a chord. Lord knows.
Yeah. Let's lay out some facts. So,
Yes.
Trench Crusade, obviously, it ran its Kickstarter.
Mhm.
Its Kickstarter.
It did a Kickstarter before it did the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
The initial one was just, here's some cool models we made, and we made a Kickstarter.
Right.
And that did okay. I don't remember the exact numbers. I know there was some problems because the models kind of took a long time to finally get to people. And so there were some people that were nervous when this Kickstarter first launched late 2024, October-ish, I think. And then it did really, really well. And they've also done quite well. Like, this thing ended by November, and I think sometime in December I had all my STLs. So I mean, like, they were
That's right.
not, they weren't sitting on their thumbs.
No, this Kickstarter ran $3.3 million Kickstarter, more than 20,000 backers, delivered a lot of the STLs by the end of the year.
Mhm.
I went and looked through some of the videos. Like I just did YouTube basic, scrolling to see kind of like different Trench Crusade videos. And within that 3 months, I was able to find more than 2 million views on videos, just like on the top results. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more than that. Like I wasn't digging down to smaller channels. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that's like a crazy amount of interest in that game. Right.
Yeah. And the really interesting thing to me, because I asked Thomas directly, I asked him how much they spent on marketing, and he said 0.
Yeah, sure. It had an incredible word of mouth of people
Mhm.
talking about it, and still
Mhm.
does. Like, I still see
Absolutely.
plenty of people discussing it online, talking about it. Absolutely. Like, it doesn't have any like hot releases right now or whatever, but and that is always a problem with them staying in the news. Like
Mhm.
one of the things GW has gotten really good at is like this constant churning release cycle because they understand that creates its own news. But anyways, what I want to break down here is I want to do a little bit of an autopsy. Like we want to talk about why this game is successful. So like because that's super successful and it obviously
Yeah.
has a huge audience.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics of the game. Let's lay this out with people. Some of our audience might not have played,
Mhm.
right? We should state if you're interested in playing, another cool aspect of this is like you can just go get the rules.
Yeah.
Like
If you
there's just a PDF. You can just go download them.
You just go to
right
Trench
now.
Crusade and you look for the playtest rules, which, because they're not like finished, so they just still refer to them as playtest rules. But it's a free PDF. You download it, you get the entire thing. There is no
Yep.
Currently there is no way to buy the rules because they are not for sale. They are only free download, both for the playtest rules and also for the campaign stuff. And they've got tons of stuff on their
Yep.
website, which I noticed
So much.
also today. They've redone the website and like tweaked things, and it was one of those kind of like, yeah, we'll get to it later kind of things, because they were dancing as fast as they could as the the Kickstarter was going on. But now that they've got that done, they've updated the website with a bunch of stuff, and so that's pretty cool. Which I think is very good.
It's a very
Um,
easy to navigate website. And I love how they segment out the rules. Like here's the core game and here's the
Yep.
campaign play and all that stuff. It makes it so very easy to get through, which I greatly appreciated. Like it's just really nice.
Yeah.
So okay, I want to talk about how to play the game.
I'm going to say the
All right.
rules, playtest rules, are still 167 pages, so it's still
big.
There's a lot going on, but it is the actual core is actually really elegant.
Yes, and well, that's okay. That's you just said exactly the thing I want to get to. So, for our audience, explain like the very basic mechanics of what's going on here. What's like? Let's talk about the sort of core mechanic, the primary loop, as it were.
So for activation, well, for like, basically, when you first start, the player with the lowest number of models uh, gets to start. So
Sure.
instead of like rolling to see who goes first, you look at it and go, I've got 7 models and you've got 9, so I'm going first. And that's kind of a nice thing because then it's a little bit of a blue shell, if you know what I mean, you know?
I do. Yeah, yeah. We're starting with a little catch-up mechanic to make sure that the person with the more models doesn't just get an immediate advantage because they already have one.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And then you decide I'm going to activate a model, and you've not got a huge list of different things you can do. You can move, and there's different types of moves: standard, charge, retreat. And then there's a dash, which is still a move, but a different type of move. There's ranged attacks, there's melee attacks, and then that's pretty much about it. But the trick is that some things that you want to do are what they call risky, right?
Yep.
So a risky action, if you fail a risky action, then it ends the activation of the model. So you can only, I think, activate, I don't remember if it's 2 or 3 times. It's been a minute since I've played, but it's you have a limited number of activations you can do in any turn, and you always have to roll. Well, you don't always. There's certain things you don't have to roll on, but there's certain things you do. You have this action success chart, right? So when
Yep.
you are deciding, I'm going to take an action, you roll 2d6, and then you have modifiers, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then basically 2 through 6 is a failure, and 7 through 11 is success, and 12 plus is critical success. So literally the only numbers you have to remember for the most part are, did I get a 7 or higher, and did I get a 12? Like that
That's
is
right.
literally like, and that's basically it. And that's for risky actions like dashes, where you have to roll and do that kind of stuff. Range attacks, melee attacks, all that type of stuff. It is just basically, it's always you roll 2d6. On a 7, you did it. On a 12 or higher, you did it really well. And that's like literally all you have to kind of remember. But again, there are modifiers to make those numbers kind of go up and down.
Right. Right. And I like that. So, like, what I like about that is this incredibly simple core mechanic. They're using the singular thing, the 7-up effectively, to run most of the functions of the game, right? So you only have to lock this like one thing in your head when you're making
Mhm.
tests, but they can build off that in a lot of ways. Because you mentioned modifiers, and that's
Yep.
true. But there's also things that will like turn some actions into risky actions, right? So,
Mhm.
like something that's normal can become a risky action under certain
Yep.
conditions and so on and so forth. Some models can be better at those kinds of things. Like, and there's little, the individual, it's built out how you would expect with the ephemera of the game. Like certain of the sub factions modify that further or give you different modifiers or change the
Mhm.
way you check and so on and so forth. And so it's the point here being, I love when it I love when you're operating from a nice, simple, easy to remember core mechanic because you can build on that in like near infinite ways,
Mhm.
right? It shows that you don't need anything incredibly complicated to still have unbelievable variation and identity, which is what you want, right? Because you want to be
Exactly.
able to like customize your people and make them feel like they're special and doing something unique. You want like the Heretic Legion to feel different than the Trench Pilgrims and so on, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and they do because of how they
Mhm.
interact with different situations and the different bonuses and penalties and stuff like that. Okay.
And
Anyways, keep going.
yeah, well, the dice modifiers are, once you get the hang of it, you find them in all kinds of different types of actions and things, and all kinds of stuff, but they're always basically the same. So you have plus dice and minus dice. So what
Yep.
that means is that, let's say that you have a +2 dice to melee. Okay. So to do a melee attack, your normal base is you roll 2d6 and you want to try to hit, a certain number to say that did I do it? You have to roll to see if you hit. So you're rolling, did I get a 7 or did I get a 12? Otherwise it doesn't, if you got lower than a 7, it doesn't matter. But if you have +2 dice to let's say melee, and you're doing a melee attack, it's not that you roll your dice and add 2 to it. What you do is you take those 2 dice that you're going to roll and you add 2 more d6s to it. So you are now rolling 4d6. Now you're thinking
Right.
yourself, it should be very easy to get 7 on 4d6. Well, probably true. But what you're actually doing is you're still rolling 4d6, but you still only get to use 2 of them. But
Yeah.
because
It's
it's
take the
plus,
best.
it's
Yep.
take the best. If you're doing minus dice, let's say you have a -1 die to hit a guy because he's got cover or whatever the deal is, I don't know. then you throw 3 dice again because you're adding another die to it, and then you have to take the 2 least.
Right.
So for plus dice, it's always take the 2 best, and minus dice, it's always take the 2 least. But you're always adding the number of dice in the modifier. If it's a +2 dice, you're throwing 4 dice and taking the top 2. If it's a -3 dice, you're taking 5 dice and taking the lowest 2. So I'm sure a mathematician could tell you about all the different weird waves and variances and things like that, and whatnot. But it's got 2 benefits in that it gives a lot of other granularity into it, but then it also is really easy to keep in your head, because the worst is when you're like constantly having to go back to the rules and remember things, or to remember things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, here's a fun, simple math thing you can do to understand probability.
Yep.
What's your chance of getting a critical success on just a normal 2d6 roll? Assume no other weird modifiers going on. But what is your normal chance of getting a 12?
1 out of 36, isn't it?
That's exactly right. Yes, exactly. A 6 on both dice, 1 in 36. Yep. What is your chance of getting a crit when you have minus dice?
I would say,
because that would mean all 3 dice have to be 6s. Right?
Right. Yeah, yeah. So you'd have to, then you're looking at that's carry the 7. That's a lot more. A lot more.
Yes. It's 1 in 216.
Sure.
So like that shows you I like this kind of playing with this curve and plus and minus dice, just like as a designer, is really smart.
Mm-hmm.
Because what it ends up doing is really interesting things with the probability curve. So for simplification here, when you're making a basic check on 2d6, assume nothing else is going on, right? It's just like a straight check, 7 up.
Mm-hmm.
You have about a 60%, I'm rounding slightly, but about a 60% chance of success.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which is not huge. Like that's pretty fine. Okay.
Yeah.
If you add another die into that check, okay,
Mm-hmm.
And even taking the best 2, your chance of a success increases dramatically.
Sure.
Okay. It's about 1 die is, again, I'm just going to give the like rough numbers here. It doesn't, because who cares? But like it's roughly about another 18% increase.
Mm.
Okay. So like that's very significant. Same thing with, by the way, adding a minus die. It's what swaps it in the other direction.
Yeah.
So like these things really do, it moves the probability curve in a really fascinating way. All right. When you kind of play around with this. And but it's also like, other than the weird thing of saying minus dice, honestly, this is my only complaint with the core mechanic, is I don't like the term like minus dice, like how they have it written. Okay.
Yeah.
Because what it feels like your head wants to do is like literally subtract dice, but that's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. I wish they had come up with like a slightly different term for it. Okay.
Yeah.
But
negative dice. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. The thing that I found, and we're in version 1.6.3, I think, currently.
Yeah, it sounds
so
right.
They've been, iterating on this for a while. The one thing that I've been finding is that, because I've been looking at these rules now for a while, and there's definitely things that are getting tweaked words wise, so they make more sense when you read them. Because I mean, Thomas, I don't think English is his. It's English is at least his second language. I'm sure he speaks more languages than I do, but I don't think I don't think he grew up speaking English directly or whatever.
Probably true.
Yeah. And so, I mean, again, he speaks more languages than I do. And so that's pretty cool. But my point is that there are times when I read some things and I'm like, I don't know if they mean this or this. The blood markers thing is a bit of that, at least currently in the rules. When Sam and I were playing, we were a little confused by how the blood markers work. Basically, every time that your model suffers some damage, like a guy attacked you and you didn't die, but you did suffer some damage, you put a blood marker next to the model to track this damage. And they suggest a small red die if you've got one. And then that way you can keep track on the pips of how many damages, how much damage you take. And then whenever, every time that the model that has the blood marker on it takes an action, shooting, melee attacks, blah, 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 your opponent can declare that they are spending one or more of the blood markers on your guy. So your guy's trying to shoot somebody and your opponent could be like, they're going to be worse at it right now because I'm going to spend a blood marker, which then gives them a -1 die to the dice pool when they're trying to do the action success chart. And for a while, we were taking it a little bit differently, but but we when we went back and reread it, it made more sense, and there's that kind of thing. But then blood markers can also be used by your opponent when the model is suffering damage. So I can be shooting at you, and initially the way we thought it was is it was like a what are those things in the Tau use in 40K, the marker lights or whatever.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we thought it made it just easier to hit you, but actually what it does is that when you try to do something and you've got a blood marker on you, I can choose to make it worse for you, and it makes it harder for you to get your actions done. But also, when you're trying to not take damage, I can make that worse a little bit too, because then each marker that's on there can be converted into +1 dice or plus dice on the injury chart roll, which then makes it
Right.
much harder to not injure yourself, basically. So there's all those different types of things on there. And then if you have 6 blood markers on you, then your opponent can do something called a bloodbath, which is like way worse, and it's a whole thing. And then there's also blessing markers, which some models get and some don't. And they kind of, I don't want to say they do the opposite, but they do sort of do the opposite. They give you benefits and things like that. And it's not so much, it's the difference between I'm going to spend your blood markers that I put on you by damaging you to make it so that you do things more difficultly versus I have a blessing and I'm just going to use it to be able to hit better and stuff like that. So once you kind of get your head, in my opinion, the blood markers and the blessing markers are kind of the hardest part to figure out, and they're not that difficult once you get it. But it's an interesting kind of concept because you are literally never really tracking like hit points and stuff like that. You're never
Right. No.
doing any of that kind of jazz.
Yeah. Because your injury chart, it's so I will say this. A lot of this feels like if I were going to take more time,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
which Tomas obviously was very involved in, right?
Yes.
In
Mhm.
creation of. If I were going to take that kind of conceptually
Right.
and update the rules to like 2025 design technology,
Mhm.
okay, like how I would write a game like that, because that was very of its time in the 90s,
Yeah.
very like associated with original Necromunda and some other things that were there. But if I were going to take a lot of that core concept, like the feel of it and like how things are sort of interacting and bring it into 2025, it would look like this,
Mhm.
right? And that's not like, please do not mishear me and say that I am like putting a ding on Tomas for that in any way. What I'm saying is, I think he designed something very smartly here, right? Very
Mhm.
modern
Mhm.
in it. Like, and yeah, the way the like injury rolls work, right, is just like very simple in the way it works with like shield, your armor, or stuff like that, and how that works. And basically, whether you're taking hits or going down or getting put out of action, and so on and so forth. Right.
Exactly. And what happens is that, so if your action roll says, "Yep, I did hit," whether it was with a melee or range, you then roll an injury chart roll, which again is 2d6, and then of course there's also plus and minus dice potentially modifying it, going up and down. And then in this situation, what you're doing is on a 7. So instead of having to just remember 7 and a crit, you now remember 7 and 9, and there's technically no crit. So what that means is if you roll at least a 7, then you've knocked the person down. And if you roll a
Right.
9 up, they are out of action. And that can be modified by their armor. It can be modified whether they're tough or not. There's all kinds of different things. Like the machine armor is -3 to injury rolls, which is not -3 dice. It's actually taking the number away.
Right. 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 It would subtract 3 from the roll. Yeah.
So if I roll 2d6 or maybe even 3d6 or 4d6, depending on, if I've got +2 dice or whatever the deal is, and I get a number and my number is 10, awesome. Well, as it turns out, because I've got machine armor, because I'm a big, huge like mech or whatever, like the Shrine Anchorite or something like that, that 10 goes down to a 7, which just means I'm knocked down. It's
Right,
very
because out of
difficult.
action is like a 9 up. When you have
Yeah.
like that -3 or even like a -2 from like reinforced armor, it's super significant, right? Because it
Yeah.
means to put you out of action on just that roll, they have to roll like an 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, obviously you can attack people who are knocked down and like that
Hmm.
gets easier and has
Hmm.
bonuses. And like oftentimes that's actually how you get figures out is like you knock them down and then like kill them when they're on
Yeah.
the
Enough
ground, which
times.
is like
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, which makes sense. Like it's both flavorful and gritty and appropriate for the setting, right? Which I like. The way
Hmm.
they structured the math here, it's one of those beautiful things we've talked about before where like the rules feed the feel of the game,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's got that verisimilitude because for a lot of these like tough threats, I don't mean tough like the specific rule, where it's
Yeah,
tough.
right. Yeah.
But like for a lot of these tough threats in the game, you got to you can't just like, it's very rare. It should say you can, but it's very rare that you just like, boom, out of action, in any kind of quick way.
Yeah.
More often it's like you hit them enough, you get some blood markers, you knock them down.
Mhm.
And then when they're down, then you like jump them and you're like, get them guys. And you just
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
stab them to death. And that feels like super grim and gritty, right? Of you just like kicking this and stabbing this thing that's on the ground, writhing, and
Oh,
you're
yeah.
trying to, destroy it. Like that is that perfect match of mechanics and vibe.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. And they've already had to go through and do some changes to some things because when Sam and I first started playing, my Shrine Anchorite from the Trench Pilgrims had the machine armor had -4 to injury rolls,
Right.
which basically was almost impossible to actually out of action that guy. And then initially I was like, okay, so they're just basically saying this guy's always going to be a threat. You can keep knocking him down. It's highly unlikely you're ever actually going to out of action that guy. But that's part of his deal. He is an unstoppable juggernaut. And then in one of the versions, either 1.62 or 1.63, all of a sudden now his number is -3, which now the math, it's slightly easier to actually out of action him.
Right.
But that comes from feel, that comes from play testing, and that comes from also at this point now, because these are playtest rules, I'm sure it's coming from a ton of feedback from people saying, yeah, we've never ever taken that guy out. He's always alive. And the people are like, well, so it's you know, rather than like in say 40K where you have to roll to see if you hit and then roll to see if you wound and then the opponent has to roll to see if they save. In this, it's considerably simpler because it's literally an action roll, and if it was an attack, did I hit or not? And if I did, then it's an injury roll.
Right.
And
Right.
that's pretty much about it.
Yeah, and like the actual activation order and stuff like that's all very simple. But okay, so and the point being is like there's a bunch of different other sorts of things that can happen. Like I don't want to oversimplify it because my point is the simple core. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
the whole game is simple, right?
Right.
There's lots of other stuff going on,
There's climbing and there's cover and
and
there's
jumping and
falling
like
and yeah,
there's
all that type of
things
stuff.
you would
Getting around.
imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Getting
there's
around
like
the field.
fear and fire, different types of weapons and effects you can be under that have different bonuses and penalties associated
Mhm.
with them and that kind of stuff. So like, there's there's a lot.
And the thing that I also like too is that if you're one of those people that was unhappy about say like 10th edition 40K where all of a sudden you just pay for a squad and then you use whatever weapons in there you want within reason. Like they give you can take one of these, you can take one of these, you can take up to 3 of these, that kind of stuff. Whereas in the old days in 40K, you were like, well, I want a plasma pistol that costs 10 points. And I want, I can take one melta gun and it costs this much. So you had to have enough points to do that stuff. The newer version now of 40K, from what I guess they may have changed it in the last, year, but it was basically you pay this amount for the squad, and then you don't pay for the weapons. The weapons are considered to be included. You just take the best ones you want within, again, they have certain limits. This game is very much a little bit more towards the old school where it is like, okay, I can take this guy and a grenade costs this much and this type of rifle costs this much and this,
Right.
and so it is back to the kind of like but again, it's a skirmish game and it's not an army game.
Yeah, there's a difference for me when you're talking about arming, like realistically, as you said, like it's 8 to 10 guys is where you're
Yeah,
starting,
generally.
and it's probably on the high end. It kind of depends on faction and stuff,
Yeah.
obviously. But you know, like I'm happy to spend the time with that amount of dudes,
Yep.
like actually tripping them out. And like we should say, even in this game, like not all your dudes are people you necessarily care about.
Sure.
Like to start, like you hope they all live or whatever, but like whatever. There is a difference in this game between like the sort of red shirts and people who are there and like the elite models than
Mhm.
how they play in campaign play and different other things they have. But like my point is that it's not like it's not an excessive amount of work for what you're doing. It just feels like you're really designing like eight beings in this
Yes.
thing, right? And the stuff they're carrying. It's kind of exactly the right amount of detail I want when making my force.
And each faction has slightly different stuff.
Yeah.
Like everybody's got bolt action rifles, I think, and everybody's got like, but then, this faction maybe has this thing that this other faction doesn't have available to it. So you get more flavor based off of those things. And sometimes those things are very seemingly innocuous. And then other times you're like, well, of course, the Principality of New Antioch wouldn't have slime launchers. I don't remember if there's actually slime launchers. I haven't looked at any of the bad guys much, but you know what I mean? That type of thing. And so again, it allows you to kind of pull some of that flavor back in, which I think that some people complain about in other games and everything. But I like the fact that they're giving you that. And I feel like, again, it is a little bit crunchier, but I'm only having to do 8 to 10 people as opposed to, 7 squads or something crazy like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
like
yeah.
in an army game.
In my mind, you're talking about relatively low skill floor to learn, right? Relatively high ceiling for how you can master it and play with everything and actually experience all the different rules because there's a lot to continue exploring,
Mhm.
right? And relatively fast paced gameplay. And that's what you talked about. Like not a lot of rolls, you're moving through activations quickly, like blah, 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 blah. Things happen pretty straightforwardly. Okay. So that's all there. I think we also should just take a minute and talk about the factions because I've actually
Yeah.
spent some time. I want to get into this game, okay? And I've actually
Mhm.
spent a bunch of time trying to figure out what I wanted to paint. And I will
Right.
say I finally figured out which one I want to collect, by the by, because I wanted to
Mhm.
read through everything and see what actually grabbed me, right?
Yeah.
Not only the models, but story and everything. And so I had to look through like what STLs are out there and, is there like other little stuff that might be more interesting or whatever. But to your core factions, like your Heretic Legions, your
Mhm.
Trench Pilgrims, the Iron Sultanate, the Principality of New Antioch, Cult of the Black Grail, and the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent. Okay, great.
And there's basically 6 factions, 3 bad factions, 3 good factions. Do
Sure.
do we need to, like, explain what the story is, you think, a little bit? Just high level?
Yeah, I think this is it's a little relevant. Yes, like go
Yeah.
ahead. Let's lay
Yeah.
down some basics because I have a theory later on when we get into the autopsy section of
Sure.
like why did this game go so hard?
So basically, the idea is that in, I believe, 1099, the Knights Templar are going through Jerusalem during the First Crusade, and they find a hidden chamber underneath a temple, and in it there is a like a some sort of relic that should not be there, and it is a relic like literally from hell, and then they get flipped by it and become bad guys, and they open a portal to hell in Jerusalem. So this is not a like weird fantasy game, like this is like
Yeah, this is
following
on Earth.
history,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then and then splits off. So that was in 1099, and now it is 1914, so what we would think of as World War One time, and this same battle, still technically kind of the First Crusade, is still going on. So
Right.
you have the forces of the church, which in the factions is Trench Pilgrims, Principality of New Antioch, and the Iron Sultanate is they're still good guys, but I wouldn't say they're necessarily church. Technically, in the if you're buying parts for like kit bashing your own stuff, there's 3 files. There's church, hell, and sultanate, I believe. So, but still, the sultanates are still the good guys. I believe. I haven't looked super crazy into them either. The models are neat, but anyway. And then there's the bad guys, which are basically the Heretic Legion, the Cult of the Black Grail, and then the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent. And they honestly get squirrelier and more crazy, demonic kind of as they go. Um, so yeah, it is a literal battle between the forces of good and evil, like literally heaven and hell to some degree. Um, and instead of having faith, and being like, "Oh, I have faith in God," or whatever. Well, you know that it's very different because it's no longer faith. It is a known principle. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Sure. Yeah, hell is real.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. It's
I've seen the sign. It's on the
sure.
highway here in Ohio.
Yeah, it's taking the idea of like, oh, well, we're going to use magic. Well, no, we're getting these spiritual effects because God is real in this game, and hell is real, and they're fighting against each other. And so it's interesting, I think, in that fashion. I think for some folks it's a turnoff because they don't necessarily want to mess with religion, and whether they're either pro or anti-religion or whatever the deal might be. There's all kinds of different things that can cause trouble there for people, I suppose. But there's also a lot of people that think that this is an interesting take. It's a very different take than we've seen before in many other games. And the other really interesting thing, of course, is the artwork and the vibes. Um, and that comes mainly from Mike Francina,
Yes.
who basically kind of like he came up with this whole concept. He was and still is, from what I understand, a concept artist who does a lot of work on the Diablo video games. and has worked for, I don't know if he works directly for Blizzard or if he's a contractor. I'm not sure, but he's been doing artwork, concept art for the Diablo games for a very long time. And he's an amazing artist. And he just started doing these cool drawings and just started coming up with this concept. And then eventually, and I haven't talked to him. Well, I've talked to him at Adepticon, but I haven't asked him this particular question. But I assume at some point he either reached out to Thomas or Thomas reached out to him and was like, "Hey, what if we did something with this?" You know what I mean? And they've been kind of working on that since. But it's a world that's coming from an artist's background. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I think that's an interesting take here.
No, 100%. Like you cannot overstate or understate. Oh, how do I say that? You cannot understate. There we go. That's right.
There you go.
Whatever. The art's super important. Look, my
yeah.
wordsmithing aside, like just the images and stuff in this is so freaking cool, right? Like every time you look at these images, I'm like, man, this stuff is incredible. Right?
It's very compelling. That's I think a big portion of why people are looking at it and going, that is awesome. I want to find out more about that.
Yeah, and by the way, so my choice, like after looking over everything, all the different rules, all the different sort of STLs that were out there, I'm absolutely the core of the seven-headed serpent. Like that is where I landed. The other bad guy forces had a little bit too much of like an aesthetic I didn't like. They were like a little too weird or tentacly or bubbly or gross in some ways. That just,
I knew Black Grail. I knew Black Grail wasn't going to be it because it's kind of basically the Nurgle faction, and I know you're not a Nurgle fan. Yeah.
Right. But the core of the seven-headed serpent, I'll tell you exactly the model that sold me. Okay. I was looking through and they've got like this like desecrated saint, this model. Yeah. The little tiny guy in the middle of the big giant demon body. He's like a little little dude inside there. Yeah. I saw that thing and I was like, holy crap, that guy rules. Like that just landed so hard for me. I was like, this faction is awesome. So yeah, just like, I really like the models for it. I really like the rules for it. Like it's the 7 deadly sins faction in the simplest form. Yeah. And again, like all of these do have like real world conceptual echoes and homages and stuff like that. It's clearly not our world. I mean, it is Earth and stuff like that, but it's not like our world exactly. Like lots of things changed in history thanks to 800 years of weird demon war. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I think that each faction has a really good, unique personality.
Yeah.
All right.
I would agree. Both in look, in story, and also I think in rules. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. They just care about different things. They play slightly different play patterns. Again, it's all evolutions off of that simple core mechanic. But like you feel it, right? Like, okay, I'm trying to do this different thing as well. So yeah, it's good.
I've got Trench Pilgrims. I painted those guys up pre-Adepticon, actually. I brought my finished stuff with me to Adepticon. And it was because some of the models are just so awesome. Specifically the Shrine Anchorite, which I love. It's just a great, like, it's just
the big impressive models in each faction are very cool.
It's a little bit like if you took like a dreadnought, but you made it also kind of a church a little bit, because it's got a spire and like all that kind of stuff, but you made it all out of metal. I really enjoyed painting it. I painted it up with like all kinds of rust effects and stuff, made a video about it on the channel and everything. And I really like how it turned out. And it was very fast, as a matter of fact. And so I really dig that. And I'm going to be adding, I think, some more stuff to that faction down the road. But I also want to do a second faction, which in my situation is going to be the Cult of the Black Grail, because I love painting Nurgle stuff. It's a lot of fun. And so, but I got to be honest.
Yeah, I like their story. Their story was cool. It was just, I looked at the models and I was like, nah, it's not for me.
The Principality of New Antioch is like very English coded, and they're the good guys as well, kind of, and everything. And they just have some really cool models. They've got guys in like pretty heavy, almost mech kind of style armor, or like World War I power armor a little bit.
Sure.
And they have these what are they called? Sniper priests, which are basically just these blind guys that are these old blind guys with sniper rifles, and I'm like, and they got like these big mustaches. I don't know. some really great models. They worked with a ton of different sculptors all across the spectrum. It was not just like one sculptor. They had that, from what I
Right.
understand, they had tons of different sculptors, and the work, I thought, was pretty astounding. I love the Trent, or the Heretic Legion as well. But as it turned out, Sam, I was like, I got the STL files for Heretic Legion and also for Trench Pilgrims. And I was about to start doing Heretic Legion, and then Sam was like, "Oh, I started building." He was kit bashing it all from scratch.
Yeah, he's kit
Uh,
bashing his Heretic Legion.
and so,
Yeah.
yeah, he did all that. So I was like, all right, well, then I won't do Heretic Legion as well. I'll do Trench Pilgrims. And so I'll probably do Heretic Legion down the road, but it's, as it turns out, not going to be my second choice, even though like everybody loves the Artillery Witch. That's like the probably
Sure.
more iconic looking model in that particular line. I
Yes.
saw some amazing cosplay of someone doing the Artillery Witch too, but I wish that the Sultanate was more to my overall interest, because a lot of the models are really awesome too.
It was the only good guy faction that appealed to me.
Yeah. No, I can understand
Like,
that.
I just found like the other two, like their main guys were just too boring. Is honestly the answer.
Yeah,
Like that is to say they're grunts, if you think about it that way, is what I mean.
part of what caused me to want to go with both Heretic Legion and Trench Pilgrims is that in the STL models, they're the STL models are very modular for
Yeah.
the grunt units, if you will. Whereas in some of the other factions, the grunts are only shown, like there's only a single STL for each model. And then I'm like, yeah, but I can throw a bolt action rifle on this guy, and I can do this and I can do that. And I'm kind of a WYSIWYG nerd sometimes. So I'm trying to figure out ways around that. Part of what's slowing me down on Cult of the Black Grail is I need to learn a little bit more about digital kit bashing, because like there are some creatures in that army that I'm like, that guy's really cool, but he needs a flail or something. You know what I mean?
Sure. Sure.
Like
Sure.
that, the main big boss guy in the Cult of the Black Grail is a guy called the Lord of Tumors, and he's just a absolute beat stick in melee, but he doesn't carry a weapon. Like the model doesn't, but you can give him a weapon. Like I looked it over,
Sure.
I'm like, so I'm like, well, why wouldn't I give him something to fight with, to maybe even give him more benefit or whatever. So I need to learn a little bit more about that to go down that road. Beyond, the normal, and you basically pay, not points, they call them ducats, which is basically like money. You
Yeah.
usually
You start with like, if you're doing a campaign, it's 700. If you're doing a one-off game, it's usually like 900 and some glory points and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
glory points are things that you can get during the campaign where you do certain things to gain glory, and then that will allow you to buy things that you couldn't get with just regular money. Like I know a machine
right.
gun in my faction is like 2 or 3 glory points, but you can't just like, oh, well, what if I got a bunch of ducats? You can't get it. So Sam and I have just basically played the one-off game, so we've been playing with 900 points and then like whatever it is, 6 or 8 glory points. But there is an entire campaign play document as well that they have available, which is
Yeah,
like
it's cool too because you get to like do so much more. It's really cool.
oh yeah,
Like I don't want to get into the depth of it, but it's just like it's a really good campaign system. I like it
yeah,
a lot.
and there's a lot going on, and it's 26 pages instead of 167 or whatever that the main book is, but it's got a really nice depth to it, and I do dig that. Um, so I mean, we've kind of touched on it a little bit here and there, but
But yeah,
why?
why did this game pop so hard? Right? Let's
Yeah,
autopsy
exactly.
this.
No, I agree. I
Okay.
agree. Yeah.
All right. Suspect number one. This is a true crime podcast now. Who
Oh
did it?
wow,
Okay.
those are popular.
Absolutely. So I expect the views to go up accordingly now that
Hmm.
we can officially add the true crime tag as we solve the mystery
Hmm.
of why did this game pop so hard. All right. So suspect number one, general theme, vibe, and art.
Yep.
Okay.
Which we already kind of touched on, but yeah,
We already
absolutely.
did.
That
Yes.
is
We
a
don't need to deep
huge.
dive on it.
That's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It super is. You mentioned the artillery witch, right?
Hmm.
But it's not just that. Like so many of these figs I've seen shared around. Like when I saw the werewolf for the
Yeah,
first time,
which is from Heritage
right?
Legion.
I was like, I gotta paint that guy. That
Yeah,
guy's
yeah.
amazing.
Hmm.
Right? Now I didn't end up doing the whole Legion, but he was super fun to paint. Like, and the art is cool, all this stuff. Like again, even outside of just the figures, like the art of the figures. Okay.
Hmm.
The art itself of the world,
Yeah.
the vibe is really good. Okay. And I'll dig in on that more in a minute. But like I think that's suspect number one for
The
sure.
first the first time I ever even heard of this game was 3 years ago or 2 years ago at Adepticon. It was still in Schaumburg, and I was hanging around in the Grimdark hallway, which now in Milwaukee, Adepticon is the Grimdark alley, but it's where the Hive Scum guys were, and then a lot of the
Yeah, yeah.
kit bashers and all that kind of stuff. And I saw a 8.5 by 11 single black and white sheet flyer just sitting on a table, and it had this really super cool like piece of artwork on it, and it just said Trench Crusade on it, and then like I don't know if there was a QR code or if I just looked it up and typed it in on my phone because I'm like, what is that? And it was just like a flyer that someone just set down. And I was like, that's what is, and then I looked it up, and then that's where I first heard about it. And it was before the rules were really, well, there may have been playtest rules, but they were considerably earlier. It was a year at least, if not longer, before the Kickstarter. And but
Right.
just that one piece of artwork, it was like a whole bunch of people kind of like walking off into the distance, and they were a bunch of like trench pilgrim soldiers, and there's all kinds of crazy monsters off in the background and crazy stuff. And I was just like, that's cool. And the name is also super evocative. So all of that stuff, I think, for sure draws in eyeballs. That's
Yep.
really the important thing, about that.
Okay, here's suspect number 2.
Yes.
The STLs being basically ready to go, begin little packs. Like you can grab your little packs for your forces. There's expansion
Mhm.
stuff. You can get them all, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That was basically, as you said, delivered very quickly, right? But it was all there. People could see what it was. You and I are always a fan with our games of miniatures agnostic. We
Yep.
like allowing people to do that. And certainly this game still has that vibe. You don't have to use their STLs. You can
No.
use whatever you want,
They've said
right?
multiple times that the game is mini agnostic. If they ever do have like official events or tournaments or anything along those lines, they'll be like, use whatever the hell models you want. They got no problem with that. And I
That's right.
appreciate that, obviously.
Which is why they include the base size in the listings. As long as you're on
Yep.
the right base, you're good to go.
Mhm.
So very smart.
Mhm.
But my point is that I think suspect number 2 is the fact that they had those models, those STLs, basically rendered, ready to go. They, as you mentioned, that sort of double Kickstarter thing.
Mhm.
And it just that makes it easier. It just does,
Oh,
right? Like
sure.
if you and I could have somebody design some STL options for our games, even with miniatures agnostic, like we did with Death Wizards. We
Yeah.
had
Knucklebones miniatures.
Matty, yeah, Knucklebones. We had Matty
Yep.
Knuckles
Mhm.
make the like sort of 6 iconic necromancer types to have
Yep.
an option, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And to me, that's I think really important because you're going to have a lot of people. There's a bunch of people who already play miniatures agnostic games and are just like they're okay with it. They're fine with jumping in and doing what they want. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, Sam converting his whole Heretic Legion.
Yep.
Sam's not scared. He's been doing this for a long time. He's ready to convert it up.
Mhm.
Okay. But there's a lot of players who might be coming over from 40K or something like that. And they've lived their whole life in wargaming being told this is the miniature for this thing.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
And this gives you a bridge. This to me is an accelerant. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, look at what we do. We learned very quickly with Rain in Hell that when we launched that game, people were like, well, what model should I use? And we're like, that's the thing, man. You can use whatever you want. It's miniature agnostic. You just do your hearts. And they're like, oh yeah, that's really cool. But what model should I use?
But
And
what
so,
models? Yes.
right. And so that's why with every game we've launched ever since, we always make a blog post and go, here's a bunch of concepts or here's a bunch of models you might want to take a look at. Here's like a bunch of jumping off points, and like in my mind, if it's me, the first thing I'm going to do is go onto Google and start looking for stuff or whatever and doing, there's all kinds of, or My Mini Factory or whatever. But for a lot of people, they just like, but I don't know, you haven't told me what I should do, and so I need to know. And so they had that ability, not just in
Yep.
STLs as well. They also are working with a company called Only Games, who, if you don't have a 3D printer or a friend with a 3D printer, then you can just buy models that they will then print and ship to you. Now,
Yep.
that is taking longer, obviously, than December because it's, as it turned out, it was 20,000 backers. And so I bet a lot of them probably use that thing. And the other thing that was interesting too is that they came out and they said, look, if you're ordering just one faction, then you will get it as soon as it's printed. But if you are ordering 2 or 3 factions, we're not going to ship it 3 times. So we're going to have to wait until all 3. So that slowed things down a little bit too, but they're still relatively on track for that.
Right.
I think they are slow now on the book because I just got an email recently because I did back it. And I got an email that the book, but I didn't even buy the book. I'm like, there's a fancy schmancy printed book with like all kinds of art, hardcover, the whole deal. I was like, I just kind of want the PDF personally. I know I'm weird.
We know you're a digital fan. Yes.
Yeah,
I love a
yeah.
printed book. But that leads me to suspect number 3.
Oh,
We've talked about it many times. Free rules. right?
Yeah,
Like you want to
absolutely.
start playing, you're
Absolutely.
interested in this game, you just go to like if you literally just type in Trench Crusade
Right.
into Google,
Into
it's just
Google,
gonna
you get
pop
there.
up. There's the first link on the left side of
Usually.
the
Yeah.
page is rules,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Click it, boom. It's not hard.
Yeah.
You open that PDF, you're off to the races,
Mhm.
right? And we talked about the book. I mean, most of the core sort of PDF of like the 163 stuff is the individual factions and their war gear and their, like it's big largely because of that stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
like the actual core rules, like if we take the stuff like when you start on page 1, there's a little bit of lore, and then you start getting into this is how the rules work. The rules themselves basically finish like on page 20. No, not even. I take that back. It looks like because Heretic Legion starts on page 18. So it is literally page 1 through
Right.
17, and that's it. And then after
Yeah.
that, it's all basically about the factions and all that kind of stuff. So out of 167 pages, 17 of it, well, 16 really, because the first page is lore, is pretty much that. And they do have a separate lore document too. So if you're into lore, they do have a separate lore file on the website that you can go through and read all kinds of stuff. And they're adding tons of more stuff. The very smart thing that they did in the Kickstarter, and we've talked about this in the past, is that for their stretch goals, they were like, look, if we make this much money, then we're going to pay Gav Thorpe to write another story and to write more
Right.
lore, or we're going to pay Andy Chambers to do that. So it's not like a printed thing or a manufactured thing that they're going to ship out if they hit this stretch goal. It was like, if you give us more money, we'll pay another guy to do another thing. And it's like, there's no warehousing on that. It just goes into the book or it goes into the website or whatever. And that I think was a
Yep.
super smart move too.
Yeah. I mean, we technically there's the gameplay rules are about 17 pages, and then you've got your other options because your scenarios and your weapons and armor at the end of the book, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like, I don't know, roughly 40 pages or something like that for all of that
Mhm.
stuff together. So, but I mean, yeah, everything else is just individual warband faction
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So, suspect number 3, the free rules, easy, boom, campaign, good organization, good stuff like that, as you said. Okay.
Mhm.
That I think has got to be a factor in here, right? All
Yeah.
right. Suspect number 4.
Okay.
Okay. Grimdark Reclaimed. You did a whole video on this.
Do you mean post mortem instead of autopsy? Like,
Sure, why not?
okay,
I
yeah.
mean, they're
I
both
just
the same thing.
well, yeah, I guess that's technically true.
Like,
Yeah,
they're
Grimdark
both
Reclaimed.
after. It's not dead. I'm just trying to say, like, it's a root cause analysis. How about
Yeah,
there you go?
normally
That's more
I
neutral.
think when people talk about a post mortem, they're talking about let's go and look and see how things did. Whereas autopsy does really mean something's dead, probably. I assume.
Sure,
But,
sure. I
mortem.
just wanted to do the true crime thing because it's
That
funny
makes
to me.
sense. Well, because it
I
pulls in
listen
the
to a lot of true
viewers.
crime podcasts, but
It's
at any
true.
rate,
The
yeah,
Grimdark
number
thing,
4.
they have definitely
Yep.
I would say moved that forward maybe or changed the game. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
they've reclaimed the
definitely
mantle.
yeah, oh for sure, for sure. Grimdark I did do a video about this. Grimdark was basically invented by Games Workshop like and I don't mean that like surreptitiously. I mean, like, if you go onto like Wikipedia and look up grimdark, it's like, oh, it comes from in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Like, it comes from Warhammer 40K. That word was really, I mean, some people might have used it in some situations, but it was really kind of all kind of coined and built and accelerated by Games Workshop. And as they've gotten,
Specifically, I
yeah,
want to take a moment on that real
yeah, yeah,
quick.
yeah, yeah,
Because really specifically, it came from John Blanche and a few other artists,
yep,
okay,
yep,
in early Warhammer days, who
mhm,
themselves were drawing off inspiration of like English punk, pulp,
yep,
fantasy, comics, things like that, like
mhm,
2000 AD and other stuff
mhm,
like that that was in their mind, other like 60s and 70s pulp science fiction and fantasy, right?
yeah,
And that was their evolution of those things. And this to me feels like the next logical growth of that. I want in your head, Adam,
yes.
imagine if this game with this art was published in like 1991.
I think that it would have started some other type of satanic panic. Like it would have.
100%,
Oh
man. There
yeah,
would have been
no.
like Mothers Against Trench Crusade or
Oh
something would
yeah,
have happened, right?
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Match. Yeah, but it would have been. Yeah, no, it would have been very bad. And yeah, this game couldn't have really, I think, been the way it is then. I mean, I knew people who like wouldn't. I knew kids whose like their parents wouldn't let them play 40K. Like I didn't start really playing 40K until like 5th edition. but I was aware about it for years. I'd see it in game stores and things like that. But I was always in a situation of like, I didn't want to play an army game because it was, I didn't want to paint that many models at the time. And secondly, I also was like, that's a lot of money and I don't have that kind of money because I'm a kid. But I had friends that were, kind of into it, and they would, get some models and sort of mess around with them once in a while and stuff like that. And then I also had friends who were like, yeah, I want to do that. My parents won't let me. And you're like, oh, because it's expensive. And they're like, no, because it's like there's demons in it and stuff like that. And it was a grim,
Of
dark
course, yeah,
thing
yeah.
for sure.
When I started playing D&D at the end of the 80s, there was like a conversation with my parents, and I was like, just chill. It's a freaking game. Okay.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
like fortunately I got them over the hump, but like it was, it was a thing. It was a conversation.
Got to have the conversation for sure.
Right.
And so the grimdark thing is definitely they're moving. I would say Mike is definitely moving the ball forward. In changing the way that these things look. And I think that GW is actually regressing to some degree because
100% going the opposite direction. They're too clean. This has that grubbiness. Blanche's art always had this grubbiness, this filth to it, right? Nothing was clean. And I don't mean that in any other way than like it felt like if you lived in that world, everything was shabby.
Everything's got tetanus. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing is that it's like 40K or Games Workshop in general is because it's so corporate, they do have to start to sterilize things. You know what I mean? And so there's that. I mean, I don't think they should, but they feel like they should because they've got shareholders and it's a whole thing. These guys, like the reason that we're talking about this, and this is maybe something we probably should have led with right off the bat. This is an indie game. It raised $3.3 million on its Kickstarter. And by the way, it started at $3.3 million. Like with people putting in add-ons, because when I backed the Kickstarter, I backed it at the $5 level, which is basically dip your toe in the water. And then after the Kickstarter is completed, then you can come back and say, all right, I want one of these and two of these and four of these and whatever. And then that number got up over 6 million from what I understand.
Yeah. The credits in the front of this book, to be clear, are 5 names.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And one of those is a layout person and one of those is an editor.
Yep.
Right. And like 2 of those are artists.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the game design happening from Tomas.
Right.
Right. This is an indie game through and through.
Absolutely.
Right. We basically use the same number of people to make one of our games that they do to make Trench Crusade. It's basically the same staff size.
Yeah. Now that doesn't take into consideration all the STL sculptors and all that kind of stuff. That's
of course.
The book itself. Yeah, it's a small number of folks that are working on this game, and it is an indie game, which means they can decide to make artwork that looks like the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent or the Cult of the Black Grail. They can do that type of thing. They can have good guys that still do really bad things. Like there's a whole section about the Metachrist, like I can't remember if it's the Trench Pilgrims or it's the Principality, but they keep cloning Jesus. And then like, it's a whole thing. Like it's just,
right.
It can be some sort of dark stuff if you're into that. And that's cool, but it is definitely redefining grimdark in my opinion.
I understand. I know we're gonna have to bring this to a close, but I got 2 more suspects.
Oh my
goodness,
that's a lot of suspects.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think that's why this hit because it's all of the above.
Right, exactly. It's a confluence, a perfect storm.
Yes. Okay. Suspect number 5, World War I.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird. Okay, but something about the World War I aesthetic captures the imagination. Think of how popular the Death Corps of Krieg are in Warhammer 40K.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Something about that World War I trench warfare, like it's just maybe because it's out of living memory completely, right? Like there's nobody alive still.
No, exactly. I think that's a big benefit.
Who served in World War I, obviously. Mm-hmm. Duh. Those people, I don't remember. We know, like the people keep track of that stuff, right? I mean, there's not even that many like World War II veterans still alive.
Yeah.
But like, so it's out of living memory. But it's just out of living memory. Like it feels like it happened in the modern world. It was incredibly horrific.
Yeah.
Right. And it shaped a lot of what the century would become. And I think there's something between like just the aesthetic and the look of World War I and everything else that just grabs people's imagination. Like I think there's something to that. I don't have any basis for that other than like a lot of World War I aesthetic type stuff seems to be very, very popular.
Yeah. I was a big fan of the Battlefield series of video games. It started with Battlefield 1942, which was obviously a World War II game. And then they had like modern day and this and all that kind of stuff. And then I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, they're like, okay, so the next one we're doing, it's going to be called Battlefield 1. And everyone's like, well, wait, you've already done Battlefield 1942, you did Battlefield 2, you did Battlefield 3, and you did Battlefield 4. Why Battlefield 1? They're like, because it's going to be World War 1. And there
Right.
were so many people online that were like, well, that's going to be boring. And then that game came out and it absolutely slapped because
Yeah,
like,
it crushed.
well, yeah, you're out there, you're running around and there's these tanks that are massive, but not like super scary. Well, they're super scary, but they're not like super crazy fast, but they're these big, massive like land cruisers, like those big that
Right,
like
right,
from
right.
the Last Crusade. Uh,
Yep.
yep, Indiana Jones Last Crusade, that big long thing. Um, a burning dirigible can fall on you, and there's like biplanes and all that kind of stuff, and it's weird. It almost, and this is going to sound really stupid. World War One almost seems like fantasy World War Two.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah,
That's
I
fine.
mean,
You've also got this like you've also got a lot of these horrors like the Trench Crusade itself
yeah,
is this like there's to say the trenches. I'm sorry, the
mm.
trench combat itself is horrific in its
Oh yeah,
conceptualization. You've got things like gas that was used extensively in World War
hmm,
One that was not
hmm,
used extensively in World War Two, right? So you got this chemical warfare that's just like absolutely horrifying, right?
hmm.
So there's a lot of elements to it that I think like because it was fought in such an unusual way vis-a-vis kind of how modern combat would turn by the time you got to World War II.
Yeah.
And because it was so static and went on for so long, like I think that it grabs people in a very, very specific way.
I
That's it.
think if you wanted to do this heaven and hell thing, and you wanted to make it World War Two, it wouldn't work.
Wouldn't work. No, I agree. It
Like
has to be World War One.
Warlord makes Conflict 47, which is World War II, but like, alternate history. But that goes in a completely different kind of wooey woo kind of like, way, like where you're literally almost heading towards aliens and stuff like that. And that works
Yeah, yeah,
relatively well
yeah.
for that. But yeah, you wouldn't have been like, okay, so there's like heaven and hell and there's demons and all this kind of stuff. And they're fighting in 1945. And you'd be like, I don't
It
know.
feels just old enough for that concept to be to fit right in.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's at the
Yeah.
exact break point.
Mhm.
Okay. Agreed.
Yep.
Suspect number 6, my final one. I think this is really important. There's a lot of community engagement. And they're like very involved people. They support the
Oh,
community
yeah.
really well. Like I think that stuff really matters. And I think when you put all of that together, like I don't want to short shrift it, but what I want to say is like I think when you put all that together, that's the recipe. That's
Mhm.
why this popped so hard, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's sort of a lightning in the bottle. I don't think you could really capture every beat of that very, very easily. Like I have no idea what would grab in that way.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, I mentioned earlier about how they didn't spend any money on marketing. That being said, the art did a huge amount of heavy lifting.
Sure.
Thomas's name did a huge amount of heavy lifting. When you go, hey, check
For
out this
people in
new
the
game.
know,
Right,
yes.
exactly.
It
But
got some like influencer people in the know talking because like I know who he is. And I
sure.
have like the deepest respect for this guy as like he's one of my like game design heroes, right?
Yeah,
He shaped a lot of
absolutely.
how I think about game design.
But I'm saying if you're like the kid at the shop who's just gotten into like, I don't know, Warhammer, maybe you're an Age of Sigmar player and you've been into it for a year and a half or whatever, and someone starts talking about this game and you're like, well, I mean, it's not made by Games Workshop. Like, what's it about? It's like, oh, it's made by a guy who used to work for Games Workshop. All of a sudden, that nugget is like, oh, okay, well, that's something. And then if you're like, you ever hear people talk about Mordheim? Oh, yeah, my brother used to
Right.
play one. And then you go, this is the guy that designed Mordheim. And you're like, oh, okay. So like that really does help. Like if you and I had made this game, I don't know that it would have done the same. Like if we could have literally made the same game, but I think that name recognition. I mean, if I was as good an artist as Mike, that would be crazy. But I don't think it would happen. Yeah, obviously, I don't know. It was a very lightning in a bottle sort of situation, and I very much hope that they're going to be smart about it. There's two ways they could do it in my mind. One way is they could just be like, okay, well, we fulfilled the Kickstarter and now we're going to go on vacation and just be like, there you go, here it is. And then they could, keep updating the game a little bit here and there and you have people could play it and then kind of ride off into the sunset. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing bad about it. But I feel like they want to go harder than that. I feel like, I mean, they're going to conventions. They're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna be at Gen Con, but they're at Adepticon. They're gonna be. They were at a convention this weekend. I remember seeing something on the website, or not the website, the Facebook. Um, so they're doing a lot of traveling and they're doing a lot of this work. And I would be astounded if they didn't come up with a line of plastics pretty soon, because the STL
Sure.
thing is great and it's a great thing for it to be available so quickly. But you know what people really like though is being able to walk into a store and buy a thing. I still like 3D printed stuff a lot. I really do. But a lot of the world really just wants to buy a plastic and clip it off a
Something
screw.
simple about a plastic kit. Ain't nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's probably, I'm assuming that's where they're going to go. They're going to probably continue, like once this book actually hits, they'll continue maybe with some sort of add-on. But again, the big benefit, like you can look at it and go, oh, so they're just going to go like GW and just go hard. Well, except that the rules are free. So, and it's completely, here's the deal. You can literally play this game and not spend any money towards them. You can
Right.
download the rules and then kit bash your own stuff, and they'll never make a nickel off you. And they're okay with that. And I think that's very refreshing as well. And I think that also is a big draw for a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, I'm sort of tired of being nickel and dimed. And, this isn't going to do that.
100%.
Yeah.
So all in all, that's Trench Crusade. I mean, I'm excited.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear it, but after this episode, I'm going to ask Adam if he has the STLs for the core of the seven-headed serpent, and if he can get his hookup to print them for me, and then bring them to the next convention we're at together.
I do not, but I do have a hookup who can get them printed, but I don't have those guys. I didn't do those guys. I didn't back that one, but they're available online, obviously.
Sure.
My Mini Factory and all those places. Yeah. Again, I think it's a great time. I think that the Trench Crusade is doing some great stuff, and I'm really looking forward to where it's going to go. But even if it doesn't barely go anywhere, if they just decide to go off into the sunset, it's still, I think, an awesome game. And
Yeah, I mean, it's still an accomplishment like nothing else,
absolutely,
right? And again,
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah. Thanks for checking out this episode of the SNARLcast, Lucky 13. We hope that we were able to teach you something. If you've got suggestions for future topics, hit us up in the comments on YouTube or shoot us an email on the website or something like that. Please check out our website at www.snarlingbadger.com/snarlcast to find the episodes, or just go to snarlingbadger.com to look at all the cool stuff that we do. And there's all that kind of stuff going on there. You can also follow us on your podcast software of choice, whatever one you like to use. I think we're on most of them. Leave a review if you do get the chance, and we appreciate your time. Did you want to say a thing?
No, I'm good. I was just going to let you go. Bye-bye.